All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're tackling a question that, honestly, cuts right to the core of how we see ourselves and our spot in the world. It's a huge debate about success, justice, and, well, the very nature of who you are. So let's start with you. I mean, really think about it. Your biggest accomplishments, your career, your education, that skill you worked so hard to master, do you, deep down, deserve the credit for all of that? Your first reaction is probably, of course I do. But as we're about to see, some of the sharpest minds in philosophy would say, hold on, it's way more complicated than that. Because at the heart of this whole thing is this massive conflict. On one side, you've got this deeply ingrained belief that our success is a direct result of our own hard work, our choices, our character. But on the other side, there's this powerful counter-argument that everything, from our natural talents to our family, is just a product of sheer dumb luck, a lottery we didn't even ask to be in. So, here's how we're going to break this all down. First, we're going to dig into John Rawls's radical idea of the lottery of life. Then we'll see how Robert Nozick fires back with a powerful counterargument. From there, we'll watch as Michael Sandel puts the very idea of the self on trial, which leads to some really strange conclusions about justice. And finally, we'll ask the big one. What does this all mean for who we really are? And, this isn't just some abstract philosophical game. The answer to this question has huge, real-world implications for how we set up our society. Everything from taxes to our basic ideas of what's fair. So let's kick things off with philosopher John Rawls. He basically throws a giant wrench into our common sense ideas about success with this concept he calls the lottery of life. The key concept for Rawls, the one you really need to get, is moral arbitrariness. What this means is that all the things we think of as ours, our intelligence, our drive, our work ethic, are just handed out by chance. You didn't choose your parents, you didn't pick your DNA, or the country you were born in. It was all given to you. So Rawls asks this absolutely devastating question. If the very foundation of your success is just random luck, how can you possibly claim you morally deserve the rewards that come from it? And Rawls builds his case with this kind of ruthless logic. It goes like this. Step 1, your natural talents are arbitrary. You didn't earn them. Step 2, even your character, your drive to succeed, is heavily shaped by your upbringing and environment, things you didn't choose. And if you accept those 2 points, the conclusion is just inescapable. You can't truly morally deserve the success that flows from these arbitrary gifts. But hang on, what about personal responsibility? This is where philosopher Robert Nozick comes in, and he pushes back hard with a defense of individual entitlement. Nozick's central point is brilliant in its simplicity. He says that deserving something doesn't have to go all the way down. Just because you didn't earn your natural artistic talent, that doesn't mean you aren't entitled to the amazing painting you create with it. For Nozick, as long as you have your assets legitimately, meaning you didn't steal them, you have a right to whatever you create with them. End of story. And philosopher Joel Feinberg actually backs this up. He argues that to deserve something, it just has to be based on a characteristic that you possess. Think about it. You deserve an A on a test because of your performance. It doesn't matter if you deserved the brain that allowed you to perform well. The point is you possess the brain, you did the work, so you deserve the result. It's that simple. Okay, so this whole back and forth about who possesses what, this leads us right to philosopher Michael Sandel. And he says, look, the real issue here isn't our talents. It's our entire definition of the self. See, Rawls has a really deep comeback to Nozick. He basically argues that we don't truly possess our talents in a way that makes them part of who we are. They're just attributes we have, not what we fundamentally are. For Rawls, the real you is what he calls an unencumbered self. It's a pure agent of choice. It's kind of like a computer's operating system. It's separate from all the files and programs. It runs them, but it isn't defined by them. And this self is so thin, so empty of actual features, that it can't possibly be the basis for deserving anything. And Sandel shows this as this long historical process, a slow dispossession of the person. We started way back in aristocratic societies where your identity was totally tied up in your social status. Then liberalism came along and stripped away that fixed status. Then it stripped away social advantages. And Rawls, Sandel says, takes the final logical step. He strips away everything, your talents, your character, your beliefs, until all that's left is this completely abstract, disembodied subject. Okay, so what happens if we actually build a society on this idea? A society that completely ignores whether people deserve their place in life? Well, the results are a lot stranger than you might think. Rawls swaps out the idea of moral desert, for something he calls legitimate expectations. Moral desert is the classic idea, right? You deserve things based on your virtue or merit before any rules are even made. Legitimate expectations is the total opposite. You are only entitled to what the established rules of the game promise you. Your claim only exists because an institution created a rule, not because of any inherent worth you have. And Rawls is super clear about this. When it comes to who gets what in society, distributive justice, he says a just system doesn't even mention moral desert. And you can see how this idea directly fuels a lot of modern debates about things like progressive taxation or wealth redistribution. The goal isn't to give people what they deserve, but to design a system that works for the good of everyone. But here's the huge twist that Sandel points out. When it comes to punishing people, retributive justice, Rawls suddenly sounds totally different. All of a sudden, he's saying that people who break the law have done something wrong, and their actions are a mark of bad character. He brings back the very same ideas of moral blame and desert that he threw out the window before. I mean, is a criminal's bad character any less arbitrary than a CEO's good character? It feels like a massive inconsistency. So where does all of this leave us? Well, this entire massive debate really boils down to two fundamentally different visions of who we are as people. In the end, you kind of have to pick a side. Are you the unencumbered self of Rawls, a pure agent of choice, totally separate from your history, your values, your community? Or are you the constitutive self that Sandel talks about, where your identity is completely woven into your community and your past, where those attachments aren't just things you have, but are part of who you are? And that leaves us with this final, kind of haunting thought. If we follow Rawls all the way, and we strip away our history, our values, and our deepest commitments because they're all just morally arbitrary, what's actually left of the person? What is this abstract self that we're trying so hard to build a just society for? That's the core question this whole debate leaves us chewing on.